Today on the show, the one and only Rocky Horror Picture Show from 1975.
Everybody loved him. I barely nearly him. I said, hey, listen to me, stay inside, but he took it away and me.
Welcome back to Geek Channel 8, or GC8 as we like to call it, the podcast for movie geeks and other kinds of media geeks. I don't know what to call streaming TV anymore. It's television, kind of, but yeah. I'm Eric.
I'm Will.
And I'm Johanna.
I'm reading right now Dan Simmons' Hyperion, which I never read back in the day. In it, there's this character that's a writer, and that writer starts out like really good, writes poetry and stuff like that. And he wrote one really good sci-fi novel, The Dying Earth. So immediately I'm thinking Jack Vance is who he's talking about, right? Because Dying Earth. Later on, he talks about how, like, way back in the 20th century or something, there was a book by that name, but it was a different, But he gets trapped. The publisher is like, he's indebted to them, and then he like keeps writing and Dying Earth 2, 3, 4. When he finally quits, it's up to 10 or whatever. And I realized he's not talking about Jack Vance. This is his version of Battlefield Earth. He's talking about L. Ron Hubbard, who started out and maybe there was one good Battlefield Earth novel at the beginning, but then it's just turns into total dreck, But he realized that was the money press, right? But then he took the grift even further by writing nonfiction, like Scientology, like Dianetics, and then that starts this whole religion. And I think he's just kind of like, oh, this is where the big bucks are, you know?
I mean,
so I think that a Heinlein, the dean of science fiction, goes back, if he did have a brain tumor and stuff like that, we can cut him some slack later on in life because he produced a huge body of work that wasn't like that.
Oh, yeah. His sweet spot was right before his juvenile stuff, in which he was forced to be more, maybe more serious in the juvenile.
Farmer in the Sky or Pebble in the Sky? I can't remember which one's a Heinlein.
Yeah, there both of those I think are ones, but my favorite is The Moon is a Harsh Mistress. So good.
But that's not one of his young adult ones, right?
It's not, but it has the same. It's dealing with serious things, in a serious manner, in a way that later on we're talking about other stuff. For those who aren't familiar, some of his later work is just very self-indulgent, and that can be true of any author. Where you get to a certain point where no one will tell you your shit stinks. No one can tell you.
Are you dissing Friday?
I'm not. You know what? I loved Friday, but
okay.
But guess and I still loved it. It was great. But honestly, it was great to me because I was 15. And
but I feel like that's all of his work. You can look at it as an adult and say there's a lot I can take away from this as an adult.
Yeah.
Like Starship Troopers. But Starship Troopers is still aimed at that demographic of in a couple of years I'm going to be eligible for selective service, and I could get drafted. That's the target market for that book.
Well, but in fairness, I think there's more going on in Starship Troopers than there was going on in Friday in terms of
Oh yeah, well, one came at the beginning of his career, one came at the end of his career. So there's a huge difference there. But a lot of writers, I think most writers, you're not at the top of your game for your whole life. Yeah. That usually happens early on and slowly declines over time, or maybe in the middle somewhere. Doesn't usually happen at the end.
Right. Well, and you know what, honestly, and the thing is, all of the him, Asimov, a bunch of these guys who were, we think of them as, these old masters, man, they wrote a lot of schlock too. They were writing just to make money. I think all of them wrote some version of a space cadet, so-and-so space,
Lucky Star and the Oceans of Venus.
Yes, exactly. They all wrote them. And I think some of them even wrote the same book over and over again, basically, almost identically, and just changed the names. And who cares?
honestly, there wasn't that much science fiction to be had, right? So
Right.
it's like, so that was still pretty good. Like my mom or someone gave me one of those Lucky Star books when I was a teenager, young teenager, 12-year-old or something like that. And I knew there was better stuff than that,
Right.
but it still was good enough, you
Yeah.
know?
That hits, doesn't it? Right.
Yeah, essentially The Hobbit is young adult.
Oh yeah.
It's whereas The Lord of the Rings is fully adult, but I could still reread The Hobbit now as an adult and take something from it. And I feel the same way about Starship Troopers. I feel the same way about Childhood's End. Childhood's End is totally a young adult novel. It's like A Wrinkle in Time or something. It's like, but all of those books can still be read as an adult. I just read Wizard of Earthsea for the first time.
Oh, no kidding. Really.
Yeah. And it is in that same genre of like young adult before they like really were breaking young adult out as a thing.
Yeah.
Like nowadays, YA is like a huge market, and you get like umpteen zillion ripoffs of Hunger Games or whatever.
Right.
But back then, it was science fiction is what young adults read. They were like, if you're an adult, you don't read that stuff.
Yeah, there was a lot of it's funny because where the lines were drawn. I mean, and this happened over and over again. Like, so some of these guys they were they were nerds. They were there as fans and then as authors and then and going on to be editors and even owners of some magazines. They were there the whole thing. So it was kind of like them deciding they were never going to stop loving the stuff they loved, and they're just going to go from consuming it to like making it and just having a huge influence.
To transition into our topic today, I think this is very appropriate because it's clearly a parody of old science fiction movies. In fact, it opens with a song where it name checks like dozens of classic sci-fi films.
I should admit that when I saw Rocky Horror the first time, I had not seen any other B sci-fi movies. So I didn't understand what they were parodying or making fun of. And now that I've seen so much more of the genre, I have much greater appreciation for the opening number, which I thought was genius when I saw it. But now it's much more fun.
Yeah. There's clearly a fandom element to it. Like they actually love this stuff. They're making fun of it, but they also love it.
Exactly. You can't. I mean, I don't think you can have effectively make fun of stuff. Really, no one knows the flaws of a work better than true fans. If you really love it, you'll look at it, flaws and all, and you'll still say, "Yeah, I still love it." And you get the chance to do that and have fun with it too at the same time.
Yeah. Quick background to about a year before this came out, October 26th, and I'm going to mispronounce this, but I think it's Fuerzas Armadas de Liberación Nacional Puertorriqueña.
Whoa.
The and their acronym is the FALN. FALN. They set off 5 bombs in Manhattan, with their largest bomb set off in the financial district.
Wow.
December 13th, Malta becomes a republic. 1975, January 1st, John N. Mitchell, H.R. Haldeman, and John Ehrlichman are found guilty of the Watergate cover-up. February 28th, a major tube train crash at Moorgate Station in London kills 43 people.
Oof.
March 1st, Australian television broadcasts switched to full-time color. April 4th, 1975, Bill Gates and Paul Allen found Microsoft. At that time, it was Micro-Soft in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and they released the Altair Basic Interpreter.
Ooh.
May 16th, 1975, Junko Tabei from Japan becomes the first woman to reach the summit of Mount Everest.
Wow. That's pretty cool.
June 5th, the Suez Canal opened for the first time since the Six-Day War. July 5th, Cape Verde got independence from Portugal after 500 years. August 14th, the Rocky Horror Picture Show was released in the UK. Then September 29th, the Rocky Horror Picture Show was released in the US. Okay, production notes. So in the early 1970s, out of work actor Richard O'Brien was trying to occupy his winter evenings in London, and he began writing a play. He was a lifelong fan of science fiction and B movies, and he wanted to mash the accidental humor of low budget horror and the grandiose dialogue of schlock, the muscular bravado of Steve Reeves' sword and sandal epics, and the raw energy of 1950s rock and roll into a single piece of theater. He later explained that, quote, glam rock allowed me to be myself more, unquote. And so that glam rock cultural moment helped give the freedom to explore transvestism, sexual fluidity, and camp in a way that was at that time unprecedented for a mainstream musical. So he showed an unfinished fragment of the script to the Australian director Jim Sharman, who had sort of made a name for himself directing the original Australian productions of Jesus Christ Superstar and Hair. He agreed to stage it in a tiny upstairs space at the Royal Court Theatre in Sloane Square, Chelsea, which was a venue that was usually where experimental work was done. He brought in fellow Australians Little Nell Campbell and scenic designer Brian Thompson, and then they rounded out the creative team with costume designer Sue Blaine, musical director Richard Hartley, and producer Michael White. During rehearsals, the working title was They Came from Denton High, and they at some point replaced that with the Rocky Horror Show at Sharman's suggestion just before the previews. The two short previews were in June of 1973, and they paved the way for the official opening on June 19th of 1973 in the 63-seat Royal Court Theatre Upstairs, unquote. The original cast featured Tim Curry as the flamboyant Dr. Frankenfurter, Patricia Quinn as Magenta, Little Nell Campbell as Columbia, Julie Covington, Christopher Malcolm, and, of course, Richard O'Brien himself. So after seeing a London performance in the winter of 1973, Lou Adler, owner of Ode Records, purchased the U.S. theatrical rights and partnered with Jim Sharman to adapt it to the screen. The screenplay was co-written by Sharman and O'Brien, who also took the supporting role of Riff Raff in it, and it stayed true to the source material while adding some new cinematic moments. Filming took place between October 21st and December 19th, 1974 at Bray Studios, the Victorian Gothic Oakley Court near Maidenhead, which is famous for all the Hammer horror productions that were shot there, and then later at Elstree Studios for post-production work. Many props and set pieces were recycled from Hammer films. The tank used for Rocky's birth originally appeared in Revenge of Frankenstein, which we did on the show. The cast was drawn largely from the original stage company. Tim Curry reprised Frankenfurter. Susan Sarandon played Janet Weiss, and Barry Bostwick was Brad Majors because Fox insisted that they have some American actors in those roles. Richard O'Brien appeared as Riff Raff. Patricia Quinn returned as Magenta. Little Nell took the role of Columbia. Jonathan Adams was Dr. Everett Scott. Peter Hinwood portrayed Rocky, but Trevor White provided the singing voice for Rocky. And then Meatloaf appeared as Eddie, and Charles Gray narrated as the deadpan criminologist. The film opened in the UK on August 14th, 1975 at the Rialto Theatre in London, and in the US on September 26, 1975 at the United Artists Westwood Theatre in Los Angeles. The Westwood House sold out night after night because the same audience returned repeatedly, but the film performed poorly elsewhere, which prompted Fox to withdraw it from 8 opening cities and cancel a planned Halloween night New York opening. Basically, it bombed in its initial run, But a turning point arrived on April 1st, 1976, when the film was relaunched as a midnight screening at New York's Waverly Theater. A small group of regulars began shouting improvised lines to the dialogue, and it quickly spread through the audience, giving birth to the standardized ritual of call and response and later prop throwing. A showing at the 1976 Worldcon, the World Science Fiction Convention, introduced the practice to a wider crowd, and by Halloween that year, patrons were dressing in full costume, talking back to the screen. Within a year, the film was playing in more than 50 locations on Friday and Saturday midnights. And by the end of 1979, it was showing twice weekly at over 230 theaters across the United States. The phenomenon was often organized through fan clubs. The National Fan Club formed in 1977, later merging with an international fan club, and published a newsletter called The Transylvanian, along with a semi-regular poster magazine. Performance groups, often called shadow casts, began acting out the entire film in front of or below the screen, complete with sets, props, lip syncing. Callbacks, pre-written shouted replies to the on-screen lines were delivered in time with the screen, and incorrect timing could be met with mock scolding, reinforcing the communal nature of the experience. Fans also threw objects, toast, water, rice, hot dogs, toilet paper, etc., at designated moments. And, of course, danced the time warp and wore elaborate costumes. Some theaters eventually banned throwing stuff to protect their screens, but the core of the event, live shadow cast, costume play, and audience dialogue, has remained intact. By the late 1970s, annual conventions were being held, cementing the practice as a recurring cycle of communal affirmation that scholars have likened to a religious event. The film's longevity was also aided by the fact that 20th Century Fox had a policy of making its back catalog available to any theater that requested it, allowing older titles to stay in circulation far longer than those of other studios. So when Disney acquired Fox in 2019 and began placing many of the titles into the quote-unquote Disney vault, they had to make an exception for the Rocky Horror Picture Show because they feared, quite rightly, I believe, that withdrawing it would have sparked a fan revolt. Critical reception at the time of the release was mixed. Roger Ebert called the film, quote, ignored by pretty much everyone, unquote, and gave it 2.5 stars, praising Curry as the best thing in the movie, maybe because he seems to be having the most fun, unquote, but also suggesting that the work suited a live audience better than the screen. Variety and the San Francisco Chronicle found the film's campy hijinks labored and lacking charm. Newsweek dismissed it as, quote, tasteless, plotless, and pointless, unquote. But over the decades, the consensus has shifted. Rotten Tomatoes now rates the film at 81% with an average of 6.9 out of 10. The BBC notes it has a lot to offer for those willing to experiment, and the New York Times called it a low-budget freak show / cult classic / cultural institution with catchy songs. In 2005, the United States Library of Congress selected the picture for preservation in the National Film Registry, declaring it culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant. Box office fortunes followed a similar trajectory. The film earned just over $1 million in the United States and Canada in its first year, but a 1976 surge of midnight showings pushed worldwide totals to 14.7 million. I think the worldwide gross reached 68.6 million by 1980 and then crossed 100 million by 1984 and 150 million by 1990. Recent re-releases have pushed cumulative earnings beyond $170 million. The Rocky Horror Picture Show is the longest-running theatrical release in history.
You've seen all kinds of movies, but you've never seen anything like the Rocky Horror Picture Show. Let's do the time. Rocky Horror Picture Show is wonderfully weird.
I'm your new commander. You now are my prisoner.
They're probably foreigners with ways different than our own.
It's fabulously freaky. It's a trip to transsexual Transylvania.
I'm just a sweet transvestite.
The Rocky Horror Picture Show.
I'm transsexual Transylvania.
The story is strange.
For tonight is the night that my beautiful creature is destined to be born.
The songs are super. The scenery is smashing. The cast is completely crazy.
This isn't the Junior Chamber of Commerce, Brad.
There's a mad scientist named Frankenstein-inspired.
Come up to the lab and see what's on the slab.
And Rocky, his incredible creature.
I knew he was in with a bad crowd, but it was worse than I imagined.
A sinister servant named Riff Raff.
I remember doing the time warp.
And Brad and Janet.
My name's Brad Majors.
Just a couple of clean-cut kids.
This is my fiancée, Janet Weiss.
Touch it, touch it, touch it, touch me. I wanna be dirty.
Eddie. Magenta.
When shall we return to Transylvania, huh?
Columbia. Dr. Scott.
Great Scott!
So give yourself over to absolute pleasure. See the Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Let's do the time warp again.
I don't know how many times I've seen this film. I never bothered to count. My low estimate is around 75 times.
Holy shit. Okay, that's a lot.
My high estimate would be several hundred. So it's somewhere in between.
I'm just doing some math here. That means that either you saw it like, I don't know, like
Every weekend.
every weekend for several years while
For
you
years.
were- Yeah, okay.
Okay.
All right.
Yes, I lived in a place, unlike where I live now, where it shows once a year. I lived where it showed every week. And I did not see it every Friday and Saturday, I think, but I saw it one of the two every week, except like Christmas weekend and like a couple of weekends. So that's like 50 times a year between the ages of about 16 and 26. So a solid decade of seeing it very, very frequently. And then I haven't seen it in 30 some years.
Wow.
So am I a born again virgin? I don't know. So I go, it's showing at the Lebanon Opera House, which is like it sounds, but it's also the town hall. It's very strange. This is what New England's like, people. It was a different experience. I didn't know how much the lines would have changed because I even made up a couple of original lines that stuck, at least in my city, you know?
Wow.
But I got there and I didn't know anyone at first when I walked in. And then there was a guy from work, you know, and just kind of like, how crazy am I getting around a work coworker? And then a row in front of that is, you know how you have like a person you know that's in your phone? You've known them for a long time, or they've been in your phone for a long time, but you don't know why and you don't know how, and you never talk to that person.
It's just a first name. Maybe that's all you've got.
Yeah, and you can't even remember that. The only other person I know besides these two is this was introduced by a young person, so it's Jordan introduces it, who's in charge of like the creature feature club, which sounds like something I would do. I'm like, okay, you're the person I relate to most here, and you're up on stage, so I can't talk to you. And part of the Shadowcast playing Magenta. Anyway, that's all the people I know. And then everyone around me is like old, like adults. They're actually probably younger than me, but I feel like I'm in a room full of adults because that's not who I saw Rocky Horror with back in the day. I saw Rocky Horror with young people, and I don't even know, like, some of the lines just aren't that PC. And I'm sitting around a bunch of people and nobody knows the lines and nobody's shouting them out. And I feel a little weird saying, like, the creepy old guy saying all these really raunchy lines around a lot of people who don't know what's going on, you know? And so like eventually it like tamps down and I felt very inhibited. And that is exactly the opposite feeling of and reason why I got into Rocky Horror to begin with, because when I discovered it in my teens, I went there and I felt like these are my people. And I so did not feel like these are my people, you know, like, so that was my weird experience. Now I dragged you guys to this, I don't know how many times. Will, I probably took you to your first one. I want to know what your like.
Okay, so I'm going to say that I had the most, I'm going to use the term white bread experience where I was a young nerd who was very deeply uncomfortable and also like was like I don't even know where to look because I can't look at these half naked people who are on the screen and I can't look at the half naked people who are not on the. I don't know.
Did I take you?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
But one of my favorite stories regarding this is because I'm like, you know, it was something. It's something where it's like this is for the outsiders, right? You know, so being uncomfortable was not. I mean, yes, I was uncomfortable and etc. But like nobody was going out of their way to. Well, actually, that's not true. They totally go out of their way to make you uncomfortable. But anyway, it was all in good fun. The one of my favorite stories about this is just a couple years ago. My nephew calls me up and says, "Uncle Bobo, I'm desperate. I need a pair of overalls." I'm like, "Okay, well, I got some. I mean, you know, I'm not sure if they'll fit. They might be big on." He's like, "That's okay. That's perfect because I need it for my Shadowcast because he'd been doing that for a couple of years at that point." He's like, and he said, "I'm doing Slutty Mario as part of because."
Nice.
Yes, right. And so I don't know all the rules, but apparently sometimes there's just somebody who dances, and that was that was the Slutty Mario costume that he needed. Of course I had the overalls. I got it to him, and the pictures are great and everything, and they went over great. And he's like, "Well, I'll bring them back to you." I'm like, "No, you keep them, and thank you so much for thinking of me, your time of need." Being able to participate and help my nerdy, pervy nephew do his thing. I love it. I love it. That just really made me want to tear up. So that's my favorite thing with that.
So I was a junior in high school and I went along with a whole troop of 8 other Rocky Horror virgins that were going with seniors. Like I was friends with a mix of goth kids and nerds and theater people. So Rocky Horror was kind of perfect for this like weird blend of friends of mine. But what was notable about it for me as an experience was that we had a mixed gender sleepover at my house afterwards. Like all of us just in this like tangled pile of children in fishnets sleeping on the living room floor. And like my parents are like they fancy themselves like really liberal and in a lot of ways, but like sexually like pretty repressed people. Like love them. But this to me what was astonishing is that they let me do this. Like they let me go out in basically like my underwear and fishnets and like a black jacket and boots and all of my friends the same. And my friend Shannon's boyfriend, his name is Carl Spindler. And Carl went as Rocky. And what was funny about this is like Carl was this like figure in our group as this like outlier. Like he was a nerd and a theater person who was also like insanely buff, like the sort of person who couldn't put his arms totally to his sides because his biceps were too
Oh my
big, so
God.
he couldn't actually like put his arms to his sides. So anyway, this was Carl. Carl went as Rocky, and my friend Shannon was with this group, and then a whole bunch of us like Rocky Horror virgins and also actual virgins, all like having this like grown up experience with other adults who were much more worldly than we were. And so I remember this very fondly of feeling like inducted into this world of adulthood as part of going to a midnight movie in the first place, but then also going with this mixed crowd of people and a lot of adults from the community that I didn't interact with as a high school student. So that was cool too. And throwing things at the screen was novel. Like I'd never been to anything like that where you got to throw things in the theater. So that, you know, in itself was memorable.
Yum, yum. It's time for a tasty and refreshing snack.
The obvious meal to accompany this show is meatloaf. Yes.
Of course.
Of course.
Meatloaf again. What is your meatloaf recipe?
The meatloaf recipe I go to is the one from How to Cook Everything. I don't have it at hand, but that's what I use for almost everything because that's my go-to cookbook. I love having my joy of cooking, and I like having some things like, you know, sometimes Cooks Illustrated, but How to Cook Everything is very much like if you want to cook everything every day. Easy to find online, find his recipe. It's very straightforward, but he also gives you different choices. You can use breadcrumbs or you can use panko, etc. He'll give you substitutions. For this particular one, I'm going to suggest and I think this is a good suggestion anyway, is if you can use a portion of it being ground pork instead of ground beef. I think that you'll really enjoy that difference. And then on top of that, the other thing I like to do is lay a series of slices of bacon on it on the top while it's baking. Then I'll take that off at the end and I will use, if I want to add a sauce or a glaze on top. For me, I'm a big fan of a sauce that's basically butter and soy sauce. I'll put that on anything, but that's probably a little much for this particular thing. But yeah, and most people prefer some kind of tomato base, even if it's just straight ketchup.
Ketchup, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so honestly, I can't imagine doing straight ketchup. I would have to probably like do ketchup and a good hot sauce.
I do ketchup and barbecue sauce.
Okay, so yeah, something that's a little bit more because the sweet's great, and you know, if you put it on there at the end and like, you know, turn it up, broil it, you're gonna get that sticky sweetness. It's gonna caramelize, right?
Okay. So let's jump in and talk about the Rocky Horror Picture Show. The plot of this thing doesn't matter as much as most films. Like, it's the experience of seeing it. So I have consulted a book called Aliens, Robots, and Spaceships by Jeff Rovin, which is just sort of an encyclopedia of those things. I last consulted it on the show when we talked about one of the Aliens movies, I think. So I'm just going to read his entry on this. It's actually an entry on Frankenstein-inspired because it's about aliens and he's an alien. But there's a biography here and a comment. The biography says, out to visit Dr. Everett V. Scott, the science teacher in whose class they met uptight Denton, Ohioans. This is interesting because I knew Denton, Texas existed, and there is no Denton, Ohio. But for the longest time, I didn't really think this took place in Ohio, but apparently it does. Denton, Ohioans Brad Majors and his fiancee, virginal Janet Weiss, get a flat tire in a driving rain. Walking to a nearby castle, they're greeted by a hunchback butler named Riff Raff, always the hunchback, and invited to join the annual Transylvanian Convention. The alien, Dr. Frankenstein-inspired, the sweet transvestite from transsexual Transylvania, joins the festivities, after which the newcomers visit Frank in his upstairs lab. There he unveils his latest creation, his new lover, Rocky, who replaces the greaser Eddie, whom Frank hacks to death with a pickaxe. Frank and Rocky retire. Later, Frank seduces Brad and Janet in their separate rooms, and Janet also has a fling with Rocky. Meanwhile, Dr. Scott arrives looking for Eddie, whose remains the playful Frank displays in the glass-topped dinner table. Janet gets sick, Rocky comforts her, Frank becomes jealous, and everyone is distracted by a floor show and late-night swim. Fed up with Frank's excesses, quote, society must be protected, unquote, Riff Raff, no longer a hunchback, and his consort Magenta show up in their glittering alien garb and blast Frank and Rocky to death with a laser gun. Janet and Brad, no longer uptight, depart with Dr. Scott, and the entire castle is teleported back to Transylvania. As we said, this opens with the song Science Fiction Double Feature.
Yeah.
And it name checks every film I want to do on this podcast, practically, you know?
Yeah.
Richard O'Brien, who plays Riff Raff, wrote it. And although it's unlikely he would have seen the performance of Marty Feldman in the Young Frankenstein, which we did last time, since it came out so close together to this. I mean, this came out in 75, that came out in 74. But I noticed his vocal delivery of Riff Raff's lines are so similar to Marty's inflections and stuff like that as Igor in Young Frankenstein. And neither of them are like Lugosi's Igor, the traditional Igor, nor the stereotypical, yes, master, which is actually a Peter Lorre type voice. Like, it's neither of those things. It's unique to both of these films. So either there's some sort of cross-pollination going on there. And maybe that Marty Feldman saw the stage show and based his version on that or something. I don't know.
Well, you know, I read a little bit about Feldman because his look and his delivery were all very interesting and unique. And he was a character. He was, you know, a man about town, a vegetarian, I believe, avoided politics, but was a socialist when it came up. And also the other political stance he took was in favor of LGBTQ rights.
Well, clearly Richard O'Brien is too, you know?
Right. So, I mean, like, yeah, I'm like, cool. Interesting. I would love to know more about what their cross-pollination might be. But yeah, that was a great observation that they have very similar and unique to them, to those two films.
Richard O'Brien, the last movie we saw him in on this podcast was Dungeons and Dragons, where he was Xylus, the leader of the Thieves Guild.
Yes.
I'm surprised we haven't done a Tim Curry movie, but we have done The Lovely Bones, the Peter Jackson film, which had Susan Sarandon as the mother. So we've seen a couple of these actors before. I also wanted to mention that although I'm from Ohio originally, and you're in Ohio, I first saw this movie in Ohio. I always thought it took place in Texas because I knew there was a dent in Texas. But as I was researching this, I learned a couple of things. The map that Brad and Janet's travel path is on is Southern Ohio.
Wow. Okay.
The newspaper that Janet's reading, you know, later it becomes one of the popular props. And if you see this live, is everybody will hold a newspaper over their head during the rain scene as she's doing. It's a copy of the Cleveland Plain Dealer.
Huh.
So another Ohio reference. So I think this is supposed to take place in Ohio.
Well, apparently we have developed a reputation for weird shit here, but you know, since I'm here, it's kind of gone over my head. I'm like, okay, no, I accept that.
One of the other things that I love is the absolute campiness of how innocent Brad and Janet are in the beginning, just like comically dreamy-eyed and optimistic. And I can't think of another film that really nails that parody as well. But just their, you know, clear enthusiasm for each other and not really knowing what to do with their sexual energy. Maybe not even recognizing it fully as sexual energy until they get to the castle is one of the delights, especially as a high school student, where maybe there was more of that I recognized when I saw it. But I think that sort of innocence is something that makes people keep coming back, that there's a sort of nostalgia for that moment in our lives before we all turn to the dark side. One of the things that I like about the film, although, you know, every time I watch it, this part of the delight fades a little bit, which is the surprises that the film manages to pull off, you know, twists that you're not expecting. Like, I won't go for any major spoilers, but even the moment where first Janet wakes up and it's Dr. Frankenfurter like in the bed with her, and then we get to see the next scene and it's Brad, and the same thing happens. And that as a teenager growing up in like a relatively conservative area of Pennsylvania, this, like, seeing this for the first time was, you know, pretty like, oh my gosh, I didn't know that they could make jokes about that in a movie in that way. Just like very, very playful, but also very forward for the time that the film was made. And I think that some of those jokes, some of those moments of transgressive and, you know, and playful at the same time really stand out for this film. And it's hard to find another film that really hits that tone quite so perfectly.
Yeah. It's a showdown. Young Frankenstein versus Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Oh, no.
So, okay.
Yeah.
Who was the better science teacher? Fred Frankenstein or Dr. Scott?
Ooh. I think Dr. Scott. Dr. Scott's the better science teacher.
I give it to Fred Frankenstein.
He actually teaches something. Like he's like has an actual like lecture that he does.
Absolutely.
Because Dr. Scott talks basically sci-fi babble.
Right.
You know, it doesn't really make any sense. Whereas Frankenstein's like neurology lecture actually kind of quasi makes sense. And an entire scene is devoted to it.
Yeah, yeah.
He actually teaches something. Like he's like has an actual like lecture that he does. Whereas like in Rocky Horror, they're just like, you know, let's go see the man who began this. Which, by the way, is one of my pet peeves about this film. It's like, why? You just proposed, and now like you're gonna go back and see your high school science teacher to get his approval of your marriage or something?
Yeah,
like,
that's kind of odd, a little bit.
Anyway, I got to go with Fred Frankenstein on this one.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I think the very idea that they would do that, and then of course he shows up there where they accidentally end up later. Anyhow, all of that is a part of the homage to the ridiculousness of these movies, of the campiness. Because how many times have we seen where it's like, well, not only is it, you know, is he a Frankenstein, he is also a werewolf or whatever, where it's like, no, you just made this way too complicated for no reason. It's kind of like that. I feel like it's something like that. Where it's like, oh, it makes no sense. And that's on purpose.
Next, weirder hunchback assistant, Igor or Riff Raff?
Ooh. Well, Igor is his eyes are wonderful. His takes are nice, but Riff Raff really delivers a whole different level of creepy.
I'm definitely going to go with Riff Raff. Definitely weirder.
Okay.
Less kooky. I'd say less kooky, but weirder. Is that an okay distinction to make?
Yeah, that's an okay distinction to make. You know, I got to go because he does weird stuff like, I ain't got nobody, you know.
That's really good.
Or he just has like non sequiturs, like his bathroom story, like get out of the bathroom story at dinner. Like, I got to go with Igor on this one.
Okay, we're in disagreement, but that's okay.
So split decision. So I should be writing this down. Okay, next question. Better fourth wall breaker, Marty Feldman's Igor or Charles Gray's Criminologist?
Oh, wow. I'm gonna have to give it to Gray.
I think I like Igor's better, only because it's surprising when he does it.
Okay.
Charles Gray, it's like his whole character is set up to break the fourth wall.
I got to give it to Gray based on, if nothing else, the like instructions on how to do the time warp.
Yes.
It's just a jump to the left. Like,
okay, all right. That's fair. That's a good break of the fourth wall. I will give you that.
Next. Not better, not worse, but funnier German accent. Inspector Kemp or Dr. Scott?
It's hard to separate Inspector Kemp's German accent from everything else about him, like the arm that doesn't behave and everything like that. Accent. Yeah, I guess I'll still go with Kemp.
Okay, I really like Kemp, and I think it's because of the many times in where he's saying it with his accent, and then they're like, "What? What did you say?" And he says it with a less strong accent, and I'm like, that just kills me every time. Every time, I love that.
His footsteps. Footsteps.
Oh yeah, footsteps.
Yeah, I gotta agree with you. I'm gonna go Young Frankenstein on this one. It's the first one that all three of us agree on. All right. Next, better prop recycling. Young Frankenstein using Strickfaden's devices, or Rocky Horror literally reusing the Hammer Horror tank and the dummy from the tank.
Yeah.
From Revenge of Frankenstein.
Yeah, that's okay, so I'm gonna have to say, and this is sort of, maybe it's not fair, but because they gave the credit for the first time they gave, and for the very first time they gave him credit. I think I'm gonna go with Young Frankenstein for this one.
I'm gonna go with Young Frankenstein's use again on this.
I am too, because he showed up, he brought all that stuff, which he had kept in a garage.
Yes.
For 30 some years, 40 years. Yeah, 40 years. And then he like was making new stuff, supposedly. Like,
yeah, I mean, yeah, totally. No, but yeah, when we saw, we were looking at Tank, and the thing is that we didn't have, both me and my wife had, of course, we've seen Rocky many times, and we didn't have the context that we had. And she was like, that was in the other movie. That's the same Tank. But before, we didn't know. We just thought that was...
That's what we do on this show, right?
I love that a big part of what we do is that some of the tools that we were taught in our various educational settings so we could dissect the great works of Shakespeare or whomever. We use it to talk about cheesy horror movies. Yes.
This is a big one. This next one. Better tap dancer, Frederick Frankenstein or Columbia?
Okay.
Okay, real talk. Frankenstein. I think he had it, man. I think he was killing it.
That's not even like a fair fight. I mean, Fred Frankenstein is Gene Wilder. He's amazing. So yeah, what I would say is I can close my eyes and play back that scene from Young Frankenstein, and I can't do the same for Columbia.
All right. Even though she fell at the end, I got to go Columbia because I think her tap was like crazy good. Like, and it was much faster. Like what she had to do was like, I think more complicated. Okay. It like carries the tune. And on top of that, like there's there's some people who believe that the whole reason the time warp was even put into this movie was so that little Nell could tap dance.
Oh, wow.
So we're going to call that a split decision.
All right, fair.
Okay. Best single scene. Like they only had one scene in the movie. Best single scene show stealer. Gene Hackman as the blind man or Meatloaf as Eddie. Because they're both only in it for one scene.
Oh, okay. Well, first of all, I'm really glad that you brought Meatloaf into this matchup. This, like it's two of them against each other. I'm gonna go with Meatloaf. I mean, like I love Gene Hackman, but like you don't get enough Meatloaf on screen. There's only a handful of performances, and this is one of the great ones.
Oh, wow. You got to give it. I'm sorry. You got to give that to Meatloaf.
Absolutely.
That's
Absolutely.
over the
This,
top.
I mean, Hackman is good, but Meatloaf, like that is my favorite. That is my favorite part of the whole show. Like, I think I like it better than the time warp. Yeah, the hot patootie part.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Next is a fashion question. Who wore it better? The mink with the heads and the paws and everything still attached. Elizabeth, who had a white one, or Frankenfurter, who had a black one. And both of them had heads and paws and all sorts of shit on them.
Okay, I have to give this to Frankenfurter. Okay, so this is something that, if God forbid you haven't seen it, the man is not a beautiful man, but he just has the.
Don't judge a book by its cover.
Right. He has so much swag. Yes.
All right.
No, that's going to be Elizabeth. I'm sorry. I think it's funnier and
I got to go with Elizabeth on this one because Frank just has it on like for the floor show.
Yeah.
And then tosses it off because of course he jumps in the pool anyway. But with Elizabeth, it's actually a plot point. Like first you got like Igor trying to bite it, and then she like says, well, be careful with that. Look at how many heads it has, count the heads or whatever. So it's like actually calls attention to it, so I got to go with Elizabeth on that. Okay, here we go. This is a good one. Bear with me here. It's a long question. Which is the superior repressed fiance seduces a Frankenstein monster musical number? Elizabeth's operatic Ah, Sweet Mystery of Life in Young Frankenstein, or Janet's frantic touch it, touch it, touch it, touch me in Rocky Horror?
Like that there's these two things that can be directly compared.
What's that?
The fact that these two very specific things happen in both.
What we were taught in English class. What
Compare
you
and
said,
contrast.
I'm doing it. Okay, let me repeat the question. Which is the superior sexually repressed fiance seduces a Frankenstein monster musical number? Elizabeth's operatic Ah, Sweet Mystery of Life from Young Frankenstein, or Janet's frantic touch it, touch it, touch it, touch me from Rocky Horror?
touch it, touch it, touch it, touch me. I want to feel dirty. That one.
Damn it, it's Janet. I mean, it's so good.
Gotta agree with you. I gotta agree with you on that one. More. And by the way, I watched we've talked about the charismatic voice on this show before, and she recently did her first like long form one, which was a 3-hour reaction video to this movie.
Oh wow.
And I was one of the things I had in my notes, I noticed she talked about multiple times, which she compared it to Grease and specifically Sandra Dee, like Janet being like Sandra Dee. And that's exactly what I thought with like when Magenta and Columbia are like making fun of her, touch me, and that reminded me so much of like the song that the Pink Ladies sing. Was it Raw? Stockard Channing character Betty Rizzo was her name. Rizzo, yeah, Rizzo. So reminded Magenta, so reminding. But then I realized this came out like before Grease. You know, that's what that scene so reminds me of when they're watching her. Anyway, okay, so that's definitely goes to Rocky Horror. Best third act heel turn by a sinister housekeeper, Frau Blucher or Magenta.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Frau Blucher for this one. Pretty
Okay.
pretty iconic.
I mean, both very musical. You know, that's a part of the thing. And okay, I'm actually a really big fan, weirdly, of their closing number there, as short as it is. So I'm gonna go with Magenta.
This was a tough one for me, but because I feel like Frau Blucher like was more in charge of stuff, whereas Magenta felt like she was just going along with Riff Raff.
Yeah.
And like if Riff Raff hadn't been there, she'd stay loyal to you know, because like she was even hitting people with the Medusa device just at his whim, even Columbia, who was kind of like her friend. So I'm just like, I gotta go with young Frankenstein on this, Frau Blucher. She seemed to have more agency. So okay, last one. Better last scene hairdo. Elizabeth or Magenta. Both had the Elsa Lanchester like Bride of Frankenstein hairdo.
Yeah.
They both did.
You know, here's the thing. Like, by the time you get to the end of Rocky Horror, like so many wheels have come off the bus in the best possible way. I don't know if the hairdo really does anything extra for the movie. And maybe this isn't the right way to answer the question, but I feel like getting to the bride's hairdo at the end of Young Frankenstein really feels like a moment that they've achieved. And it doesn't feel like that in Rocky Horror. It's just kind of adding to the chaos and delightfulness of like, I mean, all of the costuming and hair and makeup in Rocky Horror is so strong that particular moment doesn't stand out as much as it does in Young Frankenstein.
For me, I'm going to go. I'm visually again with Magenta. I love that. I love that scene. So I'm very biased on that one. So yeah. Though I absolutely loved the acting and the just the sheer comedy that Khan brought to that end scene. I'm like, wow, you that was raunchy, lovely raunchiness.
I gotta agree with you. I gotta go Rocky Horror on that one too. So let's total this up. Young Frankenstein wins the day on this one.
Narrowly.
Very narrowly.
I think that covers it all, and I gotta say, this was one of my favorite two sets of movies, side by side. Good pairing, very much so.
If you can join the conversation, we have a Facebook group. Or you can write to us at GC8 Podcast. That's letter G, letter C, number 8, podcast at gmail.com. Like and subscribe. We come out every date with an 8, the 8th, the 18th, and the 28th of each month. If you like it, give us a good review on the iTunes platform in particular, Apple Podcasts. That really helps us out. Until next time, this is Eric.
This is Johanna.
And this is Will.
Signing off.
I got to a certain age and I decided the Grey Poupon wasn't actually terrible.